Hello, everyone. Glenn here. Before we get into this week's episode, just a quick disclaimer. We recorded this episode on Saturday, the 13th of June, 2020. And so this was before several women, men, non binary people bravely came forward with their experiences of sexual, mental, and physical abuse in the wrestling industry. And I think I speak for both Chris and I in expressing our thoughts, sympathies, and unconditional solidarity for and with the victims of any kind of abuse. And whereas there's little that we can say to take away these horrific experiences or fix what is clearly a truly deep-seated problem in the wrestling industry and society as a whole, we wanted to add this message to the top of today's episode just to make it clear that despite the typically happy and chirpy tone of the episode you're about to hear, we aren't ignoring this problem. And as wrestling fans, and as we like to think good human beings, we hear the stories shared by victims, and we hope to see better and brighter days in the future where the wrestling industry and wider society can change for the better. So with that said, be kind to one another, speak out, and enjoy this week's episode.
Welcome, ladies and gents, to another episode. We are here for the Wrestling Connection podcast. We are here to talk about more ways that wrestling connects us all, and we are here for our 10th episode. If we were running venues, we would be live right now from Madison Square Garden, but we're not. We're from our own home studios, just like we have been the last 10 episodes here on the Wrestling Connection podcast. Hello again, everybody. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us. If anybody has downloaded this one that is new, then we appreciate you. But if you have been listening for all 10 episodes, we love you. Not that there's any difference between appreciation and love, but we admire all of you. And the fact that you are letting us talk you through whatever day it is you're listening, talk you through whatever event is going on in your life whilst you're listening, whether it be trying to get to sleep, whether it be out to walk, whether it be in the bath, whether it be in the car. I mean, what other things could you be doing? I know we're kind of going towards the end of lockdown.
We are. You could be sitting in a park, and instead of meeting a friend at a social distance, you could be listening to our dulcet tones. But I want to go back to what you said about maybe you're in bed, falling asleep. Just listen to the sound of my voice. Listen to the waves of the ocean. Imagine you're in the ring, having just been powerbombed by Dave Bautista. Your back is killing you. 1, close the referee's hand. 2, close the referee's hand and hush. Before he hits 3, you're fast asleep.
I walk for miles inside this pit of danger.
But I walk on tippy toes. No one falls asleep.
Did you see when Batista had his new film out, which is called My Spy? Yeah. The tagline for the show or for the film was "He works alone."
Brilliant. I mean,
he works alone.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've not seen any of Dave Bautista's films apart from the Guardians and Avengers and stuff.
Yeah.
Did you know that one of his first big movie roles was The Scorpion King 3?
No, I did not. No.
He has a supporting role in that. This would have been like during his WWE years. Like this was before, or maybe it was just when he left in 2010. When someone can look up Scorpion King 3, but first of all, did you even know there was a Scorpion King 2, let alone a Scorpion King 3?
No, I didn't know.
So
the classic that is the Scorpion King.
I love it. Like, so they made a couple of straight to DVD sequels to that film, and I have a soft spot for terrible straight to DVD sequels. But being a green eggs and ham guy, Chris, I ain't going to judge Scorpion King 3. I've not seen it. I can just visualize the DVD cover where you've got this kind of Dwayne Johnson replacement in the title role, and in the background you can just see Batista standing kind of really far away. But good on the man. Oh, really? I mean, he has done so well, hasn't he? Like, he is now more of a movie star than he is a wrestler, and I think that's what he wants. And it's well deserved because he's really good at what he does. And I'm surprised because I don't think he was always the best promo guy in his career, but he has absolutely nailed it as an actor. So you wouldn't have thought it, but he does really well.
What a difference, personality and work ethic and, passion can make. You know what I mean? Like when I was younger, I wasn't a Batista fan. I was one of those guys that was like, Batista doesn't deserve to be in this position and all that stuff, which is nonsense. Especially like watching back the Ruthless Aggression stuff when he was such a big star.
Yeah.
But he's someone that I completely is gained so much respect from everybody, and I just he's like an idol to a lot of people, and he's the sort of person that you want to be like in terms of the way you hold yourself and the work ethic that you do and the drive you have and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? He had to go out and he didn't take anything for granted. There wasn't like, oh, I'm a wrestler, I'm going to get all these roles. Like he went out and he hustled. You know what I mean? And he got the Guardians film, which is like, and then leading into the Avengers and that sort of stuff. Was huge. But he did a film last year called Stuber. I don't know if you remember. I don't know if you saw it.
I saw the advertising, and actually the funny thing is, one of the funny side effects of lockdown is that there are still a few buses in circulation with ads for Stuber on it.
Yeah. It was good. It's a daft comedy with Kunal Nanjiani, I believe his name is. It's his co-star. But it was a lot of fun. It was really funny. But he did one called Hotel Artemis, which he was co-starring with Jodie Foster, and I just didn't enjoy it, but I loved the scenes he was in because he was with Jodie Foster, and it's like there's Batista just on the screen. But anyway,
I'm Chris. No, not anyway. I'm a big fan of Jodie Foster.
Because I don't know much of her work really.
Do you not know? Did you not see Silence of the Lambs?
No, actually, it's one I've never seen.
So many awards. She's won Oscars and BAFTAs, and she's just a great actor. I'm a huge fan, even though I'm doing this really probably quite demoralizing impression, but I'm a huge fan.
Sounds a bit like Peter Griffin. I don't know. I was going to try right before we started recording, we were talking about Glenn's impressions. He can be really good at random impressions.
Oh dear. No, I feel on the spot, but there's a microphone right in front of my face.
I know, no pressure. Anyway, welcome again, everybody. We haven't even introduced ourselves. I am Christopher. This is Glentopher, and we are here for episode 10. You're going to start using that now. Go forward.
I've had a few people. The amount of people I've met in my life that think Glenn is an abbreviation for something,
right? Okay.
So I've had people. I've never had Glentopher, but that's my new favorite. But I've had Glenston. I've had Glenifer. I've had the Glenster. I've had Gwendolyn as well.
Yeah, Gwendolyn. I was going to say Gwendolyn.
Yeah, I've had Glenn Stefani.
That's a belter. There you go. That's a good one.
So yes, the podcast, we should really, do it.
We should do it. Why don't you ask me what I've been doing this week?
Chris, quick question.
Go for it.
What have you been up to this week?
You know this, and some of the listeners and maybe YouTube viewers know this, but this week I made a purchase. I bought a PlayStation 2. Now, I understand, very recently we've had all this talk about the PS5, revealing, when it's going to come out, what it looks like. Looks like the future. It's great. But what I did is I took a step into the past, and I'm a big nostalgia guy. I've talked about that before, but I decided to buy a PS2. I found a great deal on eBay. It came in great condition, very well packaged. All the different accessories come with it, so I didn't need to buy them, separately. And I have all my old PS2 games waiting in my room, just sitting collecting dust. And I have them because, for a collector's purposes, that's why I didn't throw them out. But I knew they would come back in handy someday. And I bought the PS2, hooked it up the other day, been playing it the past few days. And I've said this before, I'm not a gamer. But I'm hoping that this PS2, this nostalgia kick on this console will really give me that sort of reignition of gaming love from when I was younger,
The PS2 is a great console, and mine lasted a long time. I had the original kind of big chunky one, like the one that you've bought, and that lasted me for years and years. And then eventually I got the smaller, slim model that came out a number of years later. And that one still runs brilliantly. I didn't recently, it was a while ago now actually, but I donated it to a friend of the show, Jamie, who does our artwork. Yes. And also, can I remind me to come back to you when you ask me what I've been doing this week? I've got a Jamie story for you that you'll appreciate.
I love Jamie stories.
But yeah, me too. I live for them. But yeah, the PS2 was great, and the evolution of wrestling games alone on the PS2 is incredible because the first, I'm mainly just talking about the WWE games here, but the first WWE game on PS2 was Just Bring It.
Yep.
And that wasn't a very good game. They weren't really recognizing the full potential of the console. And then the final PS2 game was SmackDown versus Raw 2010. That's the final one, because by that point they were well into producing PS3 games at this
Yeah.
point, but they still would bring out a PS2 variant. And that was really when the gaming kind of reached its peak in terms of like what that console could accomplish. But I think my favorite PS2 wrestling game, I mean, everyone will talk about Here Comes to the Pain, and it's a great game, but my heart belongs to Shut Your Mouth. I just love that game, everything about it. And we've spoken about that at length.
Yep.
But it's not just wrestling games you've got in that pile, is it?
No, the first game I played was Simpsons Hit and Run, which I would probably say is my favourite game ever. Been playing that the past couple of days, along with Simpsons Road Rage. I received Star Wars Revenge of the Sith in the post the other day. And
I love that game.
However, the first game, or the first wrestling game I put in the PS2 was Shut Your Mouth. And I was happy to know that Hulk Hogan comes out to Voodoo Child, which I didn't expect, which was really cool, and a bunch of other cool, and what a great roster Shut Your Mouth has. And I started playing some of Here Comes the Pain, but really the main reason why I went and just made this rash purchase was because of this podcast. A couple of episodes ago, I think it was episode 6, so 4 episodes ago, which was wrestling video games. It really kind of was the catalyst to me kind of going, right, I want to, relive some of this. And I mean, I know a lot about the wrestling games and stuff, but in terms of my memory, it's quite jaded sometimes because there's so much, So I just wanted to go back and reignite some love for the wrestling games. But I'm going to send you a text right now because I received another video game in the post today. So you've got a picture on your way right now, and I want to get your reaction to what it was that I got this morning in the post.
Oh, no way. WWE Crush Hour. Amazing.
I got this and Revenge of the Sith on Movie Magpie for $2.99 each, free shipping.
Nice one. So we've got on the cover Kane, Lesnar, and Triple H at the top, and then we've got at the bottom left a graph. Is that supposed to be The Rock or RVD?
It's The Rock on the left and RVD on the right, but The Rock has got he's like strapped into like a roller coaster.
So it looks like he's wearing RVD's singlet because of the straps.
Yeah. He does.
Nice one.
But
nice one.
I had to get it.
Brilliant.
So I'm just waiting on a few others coming. But I did also buy the ECW Hardcore Revolution video game for the PS1, and it doesn't work. And I sent a complaint to the eBay seller, and I basically said, "Here, what's going on with the game?" And he replied saying, "Don't be daft. I tested this before it came. It definitely works. It's probably something to do with your console." So I was like, "My God, what's happened?" And that's the risk you take, being on eBay,
Yeah, this is it. You mentioned that Revenge of the Sith game. I love that game because that came out before the movie.
Oh, did it really?
It came out, before the movie, and I was so psyched for the film, being a huge fan, and I was 14 when Revenge of the Sith came out.
Oh,
so I bought that game not just because it was a fun game to play. It was, one of the better Star Wars games of its time, but also because there were clips from the movie in there, a lot more than you got in the trailers that you could watch online at the time. But there's a great mode where you can play as Yoda in it, and if you kill enough like storm or clone troopers or whoever it is that your droids or whatever, he just comes out with the classic "Bites the dust, another one does."
Excellent. Excellent. Nice. I don't remember that at all. I remember playing the game because I had it for Nintendo DS as well, and PS2. I just must have got it for both systems, and they were both kind of different. But I just have that Count Dooku battle in my head. But I think it's because it was like one of the first levels, and I never got past it. Like I never made it that far, So I'm going to try and get further into that. But let's talk about some wrestling. In fact, I have to ask you, what have you been up to this week?
I've had a good week, an eventful week. I'm a teacher, and with it being lockdown, schools have been shut for quite a while now. But I managed to step into my new school for the first time.
Hurrah!
This week, not for the first time. That's a lie, because I was there when I got interviewed for the job. But like my first time as an employee, under contract, as they would say. So that was cool, but it was a bit sad. A school that's supposed to be loud and full of life and busy. You were saying that you were in a school recently as well. Like it's a bit depressing to see it so empty and so quiet. But it was nice to also get in there and just kind of think about what it would be like to teach there. So hopefully that day will come sooner rather than later. But yeah, wrestling wise, my good friend Jamie, friend of the show, he turned. He had a maybe I'll not say which one, but he had an important birthday this week. What I will say is that he's younger than 31, but he's older than 29.
Okay.
And he got a couple of things from me, and one of the things I got from him was a cameo message from Mick Foley, because of the couple of weeks ago we had Mick on doing the introduction and going through the same channel of cameo. We got Mick Foley to do a birthday message for Jamie, so that was really cool because Jamie loves Mick Foley. But the other present that I got for him was kind of reigniting an old tradition between the two of us, which I spoke about a few weeks ago, and that was getting each other wrestling autobiographies. It's something we've always long done. And I wanted to get him JR's first book, Slobberknocker, but I remembered distinctly that they were flogging signed copies of them at that Inside the Ropes JR show that we were at a few weeks ago, well, a few months ago now. And so I went onto their website or on their shop, and they have a whole bunch of them, like signed copies for sale. And I thought, well, that'd be best to give the money to them because they're a local business. They can't run live shows right now. And if I was to order a signed book from the States, God knows when it would come. So Jamie's birthday was at the beginning of June, and so I ordered this around about the end of late middle May. The signed JR book, and I would tentatively text Jamie going, have you had a package yet? Has a parcel arrived? And the closer his birthday got, the book wasn't there, so I started to get a bit worried. So I jumped on Twitter and I DM'd Inside the Ropes and said, hi, this is my order number. Just wondering if you could give me an update on this delivery. And I got a reply back really quickly, and they said, hey, that's on us. So I don't know if they'd missed the order or something or whatever. The pandemic screws everything up, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course.
But they said, like, we'll post out today and we'll pay like any delivery method necessary to get it to your pals on Monday, which was going to be his birthday. So I thought, excellent. And then Monday comes, and then Jamie says, oh, thanks for the gift. And he sends me a picture of the parcel from Inside the Ropes. And I look at this picture, and it's the Slobberknocker book, plus an 8x10 signed by Pat Patterson, which they just threw in there. I guess as a courtesy, as a goodwill, which was totally unnecessary. And it's a really cool autograph to have, I think, because he doesn't sign a lot of them. He doesn't do a lot of conventions or anything.
Random.
He's a living legend. And, I met Pat about a year and a half ago when he came over with Inside the Ropes, so it must be from that tour. And I just thought, isn't that really nice that, a local business that must be not making the kind of money right now that they would have anticipated this year because of the pandemic, because they can't run live shows. In theory, by including that freebie autograph, they're losing money in a sense, but they just did it out of decency. And it was lovely. It was kind. So I am not an employee of Inside the Ropes. I have only ever been a patron of them. They don't pay me to say this, but folks, they're a hugely successful podcast. So the chances are you know them, but check them out. Go and pay them money on Patreon because their content is great and they're just good people, as evidenced by my story from this week.
It's so funny. I thought you were going to say an 8x10 signed by GR, and it was just like, oh no, by Pat Patterson.
Yeah, I know, but it's cool. Like, so I think Jamie's that kind of wrestling fan. He would really appreciate a Pat Patterson autograph.
Oh, absolutely.
Pat Patterson's signature is gorgeous. And again, one of these weeks, Chris, I will tell you the story about the time I met Pat and how much of a social disaster I was during it. Pat was awesome. I was not.
I'm looking forward to it. I've never heard that story before, so I'm looking forward to that one. And Pat Patterson, as you say, he's not someone that, like, especially, I know he's getting on a bit, do you know what I mean? But it's not as if, like, he does signings a lot and does a lot of these interactions a lot. So that'll be a good one. Stay tuned, folks, for a future episode, and you'll hear Glenn talk about his meeting with Pat. In terms of watching wrestling, have you been going equally as nuts as usual?
Yeah, well, it's been a bit slower this week, I think, because I'm a huge gamer. You're just talking about your PS2. Yeah. And my favorite game of all time is The Last of Us, and the sequel, the long-awaited 6 years in the way. Yes, no, 7 years in the waiting. The long-awaited sequel is about to come out, so I've been replaying the original in my free time as opposed to watching wrestling. But I've still managed to do my usual routine of a bit of 2002 stuff in the background. But I'm really enjoying AEW right now, and AEW Dark has been brilliant. Like, it's the fact that they're giving this away for free and the content's really, really good. The wrestling's really, really good. I've been getting still into 205 Live, and I caught up with NXT TakeOver in Your House this week, so it's been a comprehensive week for me. And in terms of my 2002 run, we are currently in the build up to I'm on Unforgiven 2002. Oh no, I finished it. I finished Unforgiven
Did you finish
2002.
it last
So
night?
I'm on the Raw app. I finished it last night. Yeah, I finished it last
How
night.
cool is
Then
that
I had it
ending
on
with
record.
Taker and Lesnar?
He just disappeared.
He just throws him into the Tron.
And he goes. He's gone. Where'd he go? How did you
I
make
remember.
Lesnar disappear? Was it Taker that goes through? Or is it Lesnar? I've
No,
forgotten now.
Lesnar goes through. Lesnar goes through.
Yeah.
I remember watching. I had that on VHS when I was younger, and that was like one of my favourite spots. I wouldn't even watch the match. Like I'd fast forward just to that spot, because
Amazing.
Lesnar. I've never
It's
found
such a good set for
Lesnar's
it.
movement to be that normal. He's kind of got a weird kind of frame about him. So like the way he would take bumps and
Yeah.
stuff, especially like this when he just gets launched, he kind of like goes all like straight. As if he's diving into a pool.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good effort. It's a good effort. But did you like the show?
Oh yeah, it was a screamer of the show. In fact, my match of the week comes from. Actually, no, that's a lie. It doesn't come from that show. But there were some contenders on that show, like Benoit and Angle having a screamer of a match.
Yeah, I forgot about that
But
one.
my match of the week was actually very nearly Edge versus Eddie Guerrero on that show. Is fantastic. I mean,
had a lot of
obviously
good
it's
matches.
great. I mean, and Edge is one half of the greatest wrestling match ever, so of course it's going to be good. And then Eddie Guerrero, say no more. It was a good, fun show. I love this era right now. I love the back and forth between Bischoff and Stephanie. That's really fun. And what I didn't realize was that there was a not quite so memorable follow up to the Billy and Chuck ceremony where Eric Bischoff is the priest or reverend or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know how they followed that up on the following Raw?
No, but I know they have a tag match at Unforgiven.
Yeah, but just before that, Stephanie goes incognito herself. And you'd think, oh, does she have another excellent disguise like Bischoff had?
Yeah.
But no, she it's like when Stephanie did the Undercover Boss show and it was so obvious that it was her. I don't know if you ever saw that as well. That was a few years ago. But on this episode of Raw, there's basically the storyline where these women protesting outside the venue because they're upset with the representation of women on Raw. And the unfortunate thing is, back then that was supposed to be the joke. Haha! Imagine standing for gender equality, and you were supposed to laugh at it. But you look at it now in 2020, and it's hard to kind of see the humor in it. But you can see what they were trying to do at the time with that kind of testosterone, very very male dominant, male centric kind of program. But so these protesters are outside and they end up getting an audience with Bischoff, and that's who they want to complain to because he's been putting all this salacious material out on Raw. So they all meet in the ring, and this one of the women in the crowd just emerges from nowhere and kicks him in the crotch, and then she removes her wig and a pair of glasses, and it's Stephanie.
Of course.
But it's just nowhere near the cool disguise that Bischoff had on SmackDown. But I'd forgotten about it.
But that's good though. I'm glad you like the show. Because it's one of those ones where 2002 is such a busy year. You know, there's so many massive things that happened. It's really a surreal year in terms of the changing of the name of the company and Austin walking out and all that stuff.
It really is. But, I've always maintained, you compare the December pay-per-view in 2001, Vengeance, to the December pay-per-view of 2002, Armageddon, and it's like two separate promotions almost,
Yeah, it's crazy. Especially just roster-wise, it's crazy. But it's not. I do like that show a lot, and you'll be getting to No Mercy too, which you've talked about before.
Oh, I love that show! Can't wait
with the Hell in a Cell match. So that'll be a good one.
With
and
the
they have
classic
that tag
line,
match, don't they?
They have the tag match, but I'm more into it for the classic line from Funaki when he's interviewing Al Wilson. I have one question for you. What were you doing in the shower with your clothes on?
Maybe we'll find out. Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah. So what have I been watching this week? I've still been doing my 2008 watch along, just as I've been, working away and having stuff on in the background. It's not been as intense as last week, but it's still been a lot of fun. We're coming into the the PG era, with SummerSlam 2008, which is a crazy show as well, where the title matches are like mid-card matches. So you get Punk versus JBL for the world title, and you get Triple H versus the Great Khali for the WWE title. And then matches on top of that, Batista and Cena have a non-title match, and that's where Cena hurts his neck.
They always had good matches. Can I just stress? Like, I mean,
absolutely.
My favorite is their WrestleMania match, but they're two guys who often get the "you can wrestle" treatment. But then you put them both together, and that match is great. Their WrestleMania 26 match is also really good. So, like, I just wanted to, sorry to interrupt you. I'm always a big advocate for that.
I'm looking forward to that feud again in 2000, like when I get back to the 2010 sort of stuff, because at that time I was right in the middle of my Smarky years, and I was like, I'm not watching this. Cena and Batista can't wrestle. I didn't appreciate how good of a story it was, and they're like, true main eventers. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting to that. And then also the main event of SummerSlam away is Edge versus Undertaker in a Hell in a Cell match. And
Oh
I
yeah.
remember that Edge was like, I want to do all this stuff. I want to take a tombstone on the roof. I want to do all this stuff. And then like Vince is like, no, but we're PG now. And Edge was like, oh, all right, well, just hit me with a chair then. And it was like a kind of tame match. But in my opinion, it's really, really good. Edge spears Taker through the wall of the cell. And
Oh yeah.
Taker chokeslams Edge off the top rope through 2 tables. So it's a good match. It should be definitely talked about as one of the better main event Hell in a Cell matches,
Yeah.
because after that point, it becomes the pay-per-view, and then we got like 3 or 4 a year,
Yeah. I remember that match. And I enjoy it. I agree with what you say, but the one thing that always kind of was a letdown for me in that match is that spot where Edge does spear Taker through the cell. That was the first time we'd seen the possibility of a cell escape in so long. Like,
Yeah.
because it become the norm since the Lesnar Taker Hell in a Cell match at No Mercy 2002. It become the norm that you're not guaranteed a spot on the top of the cell. It just didn't happen, and it wouldn't happen again for. I think the next time it happened was probably during the Rollins Ambrose Hell in a Cell match. That was the last time we saw it. The first time we
Maybe
saw
the
it in.
Ryback one? I'm thinking maybe
Oh yeah, with
Ryback?
Heyman,
I don't
yeah,
know.
but we hadn't seen it in so
It was a long
long.
time, yeah.
Yeah, and so, so that was a bit of a tease, because when I saw that, I thought, oh my god, they're going to do something on top of the cell, and of course they're not. But but it is a good match, and I totally agree with what you're saying about the Hell in a Cell. I do not like it being a pay-per-view thing, because for me, Hell in a Cell works in the same way that the old traditional cage matches work. They should be the blow-off to a feud, not just because it happens to be that time of year. And they
Yep.
felt so special. Pardon me. They felt so special because they weren't done all the time, or you couldn't tell when it was coming. The Hell in a
It was
Cell
like,
match.
these
Sorry.
2 wrestlers are like so, they hate each other so much they can't even settle anything just in a normal match. We have to put them in a cell. It was like,
Yeah,
because there's nothing else we can do. It felt really special that way.
it was your guaranteed blow off. And here's for context, the year 2001 was a great year for a WWF pay-per-view. There was not one Hell in a Cell match that year.
Crazy.
The previous to that, you had Armageddon 2000, and then they didn't do another Cell match until Judgment Day 2002. And you think there could have been so many opportunities for a Cell match, they could have done it, but they didn't. And it made the Cell match with Jericho and Triple H at 2002 feel a bit more special. And you would go on and get more Cell matches that year. I think the next one would have been the Taker Lesnar match. But I like it when it's unpredictable when you're going to get the Hell in a Cell match. And I don't think it's special anymore. I really don't. And in fact, I think it's really lost its stock since the whole debacle with Seth Rollins and the Fiend.
Well, they
I
tried to
think,
change it up a little bit by changing the colour of it and making it red to make it
which
kind
I
of look,
like.
oh, it's something new, and I quite like the effort. But I mean, there has been some good ones since that. But you're right in terms of the specialness of it. It's kind of, faded away, like Becky and Sasha had a really good one. And the Rollins and Ambrose one was good. And there has been some good ones, but you're right in terms of the novelty's kind of gone,
The novelty's gone. I like the Undertaker Shane one because it was just unique to see a Cell match not at the Hell in a Cell pay per view anymore. It was at a WrestleMania, and I like that match. So
Yeah.
I would say scrap it. And God knows, like if they're still working at the Performance Center, and by the time that pay per view comes along now, do not please try and put the Cell in the Performance Center. It works in a big arena, Please don't even think about it. A cage match, fine, but not the Cell.
Yeah, who knows, man. But also on that SummerSlam show is when Jericho punches Shawn Michaels' wife. Do you remember this?
Oh God, yeah, and it was a bit of a botch, but it worked out for the
Yeah.
angle in the end.
So Shawn is announcing his retirement because he's been injured by Jericho. And Jericho comes out and says, admit it was me that's putting you out. You don't want to be a family man. It was me. You can't even live up to your name anymore because I hurt you. And Michaels is saying, fine, it was you, but you'll never be Shawn Michaels. And then he goes to walk away, and Michaels has got his wife there, Rebecca.
Yeah,
And Jericho grabs Michael's arm, goes to punch him. Michael's ducks, and he just cracks Rebecca right in the face. And Jericho said a bunch of times where it was supposed to be one of those sort of gimmick punches, if you will, but it just weird timing. Rebecca stepped a bit too far forward. Jericho extended a bit too far, and it's just boom, and it's brutal. It's especially the swelling on her lip. You can really do, and when I was younger, I didn't even notice, but now watching
Yeah.
it's a really solid punch,
Yeah,
and it just
absolutely.
obviously it's really unfortunate and stuff, but it just added to the segment so much. The crowd are like, oh my god. And like, see, when you see people, you kind of mentioned this last week with the Billy and Chuck thing, when you see people who aren't really supposed to be shot, like the people in the crowd or the commentators or the ring announcers or the refs or whoever, when they react, it kind of adds to it, I think.
Oh,
And
God,
everybody
yeah.
around is like, oh my god, Jericho just punched Michael's wife in the face. And
Yeah.
Jericho, fair play to him, man, because he's still trying to stay in character, but he's also given that like, oh, I didn't mean to punch your wife face, and it's like, it's brilliant. Such a good
Mhm.
thing that sparks their feud, and then they go on to have that unsanctioned match at Unforgiven, and then the great ladder match at No Mercy.
One of the best feuds of all time, and I think that you mentioned that face that he has, where you can tell that he's concerned, but I think that actually works even with the character, because the character he was
Oh
playing,
yeah,
that incarnation of Jericho was a very cold, calculated, self-centered guy, but even he had his limit. Even the character was sympathetic when he realized what he'd done. Obviously it's awful. Obviously it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen, and they at least tried to, what is it that Steve Austin always says, turn chicken feces into chicken pie. That's what they did. They turned something really unfortunate, and they extracted some kind of positive out of what was an honest accident and an honest mistake. Um, I'm really glad that you mentioned Jericho. There's something I meant to say when you asked me about what I've been watching. Do you mind if I just say something about Jericho?
absolutely.
So, and this is like almost a confessional thing. I think I'm being a bit honest about myself. So, what's your knowledge, if you can recall? What do you think of my opinion of Chris Jericho?
I think I know you've told me before that you really obviously respect his work and that sort of thing. You can say whatever you want about him in the ring, but he's a great performer. But you weren't a fan in terms of, you heard a few things about him. You've seen him in interviews that you didn't like, and maybe because of like the previous Inside the Ropes tour, maybe something like that. You didn't like the way he handled himself or something. But refresh
Yeah.
my memory.
So yeah, you've kind of hit the nail on the head. But I've kind of turned a leaf with this, and I'll explain why. Like, so that's pretty much it. I've always admired what he does, but I've always been quite judgmental about things that I've heard. Like, I've had conversations with people who've worked with him, or I've seen the way they carries themselves, and even just recently, like, he's put out some tweets and stuff about social issues, political issues that rub me the wrong way. And I think one of my weaknesses as a person is that, pardon me, one of my weaknesses as a person is that I can get a bit too righteous about my own values, or too judgmental if you don't hold my values. Now, my values are like inclusive. I'm very much a liberal. I believe in equality and justice for all. And so if I come across somebody who dares to have a different view, I can shut it down straight away. And that's not me
Hmm.
saying that not being inclusive is the right thing, but like, put it this way, our podcast is supposed to be about how wrestling connects us. So am I not a bit of a hypocrite if I'm getting too fixated on this? And here's the cold hard fact: save for a pat on his sweaty back at a wrestling show and a quick hello at a Fozzy gig, apart from like two very brief interactions, I've never properly met the man. I
Right.
don't know him. So is it fair for me to properly judge his character if I've never had an intimate conversation with him, or if I've never really got to know him? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this week I was watching Dynamite, and he provided commentary for the first half of the show, and he was just amazing. Like, he was so good. I don't know if you saw that episode of Dynamite. Like, he is
Yeah.
so good on commentary. He's so funny, but he's in character. He's being the kind of douchebag Chris Jericho character, but he's also putting over the guys in the ring, and he's focusing on the action. And I just kind of started to come to this realization that he's brilliant. And if I was friends with him, or if I knew him personally, maybe we would disagree on a whole lot of stuff, and maybe he does harbor values. But it's not, I don't think it's fair for me to get hung up on that, because I don't know him. I've not met him. I'm basing this all on a tweet here or a comment here. The closest is secondhand news from someone who I know who has worked with him. But I'm not the one that's had those conversations. So I'm going to stick true to the spirit of the podcast and tell you that I am a Chris Jericho fan. I'm not going to ask you for that Fozzy set list autographed
Oh,
back. You
thank
can have
God.
that.
Oh.
That's yours. Listeners, Chris came and popped into my work not long ago, and I gifted him a set list signed by all the members of Fozzy, including Jericho, from their 2015 Glasgow gig that they did.
Which I was very grateful for. Very grateful.
And you can keep it. But I just feel like, and spoiler alert, Chris Jericho factors into my match of the week this week.
Okay.
And I just feel like I've been unfair on him because as much as I still disagree with some of the values that he appears to uphold, I don't know the man, so I'm going to stop judging him, and I'm only going to judge what I can judge is what I consume as a wrestling fan. And everything is gold. The guy reinvents himself. He's like a phoenix. He goes up in flames, he rises again, and he becomes something new. And his work in AEW is excellent. So I'm a Chris Jericho fan.
Well, I'm glad. I have known about this, obviously, since you told me that you didn't want the autograph anymore. And that, like, obviously, because you knew that, obviously, people who may have been bigger fans will appreciate the autograph. So that was a kind gesture on your part and giving me the autograph, you know? I obviously got nothing to do with your moral beliefs on Jericho, but I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm glad that, though, because I've never met anybody who's worked with him. I don't know, you know, that kind of side to him. And you've obviously had that experience where you've heard certain stories that, you know, has been told to you by a friend or whatever, and you're obviously going to trust them over, you know, just random guys on Twitter or whatever. But I've always been a Jericho fan in terms of that sort of, like, because of his podcast, you kind of get that more personal side of him. And he's been doing that Saturday Night Special thing where he's been on his YouTube channel, he's been doing these live streams and just answering questions from fans and that sort of thing. And he does have that character. Chris Jericho is, you know, confident, cocky. You know, that's just him, like, because that's just the type of, you know, character he is, persona he is, man he is.
He's a hustler. He knows how to sell himself.
Totally, and he's proven himself over all these years that he can do that because of what he's done in the ring and the wrestling business and that sort of thing. So that's interesting. I'm glad you've pointed that out as well. But
I just think the world's. I'm sorry, man. I'm talking over you, but I just think that, you know, it's so easy to focus on what divides us, and what turned me on to your concept for this podcast was we're trying to find common ground. You know, so like we were praising Eric Bischoff last week for his work in the Rosie and Jamal and the Billy and Chuck stuff. I know I disagree with him on quite a few issues, but why fixing that when I can focus on what unites us? And I tell you what I've got in common with Chris Jericho, a love of wrestling. And I tell you what else I've got in common with Chris Jericho. I'm a Chris Jericho fan, and so is he.
Yes. You mentioned the Dynamite commentary. On the build-up to AEW's Double or Nothing this year, they were doing the TNT Championship Tournament. And basically, right before, for anyone who doesn't know, they were doing an episode of Dynamite. Where was it? It was in California or something. And it was when during the show, the NBA said, right, we're going into lockdown, we're going to stop doing all operations. We need to kind of be safe and follow the guidelines. And that was right at the start of lockdown and quarantine and all that stuff, right? So Jericho has this funny story where he went out for a match, and by the time he got back, the whole NBA had shut down. So the day after that, all these different, you know, cities were shutting down and that sort of thing. So Tony Khan, the owner of AEW, was like, I need to film 4 weeks of television today. So they went to this gym in Atlanta, I believe it belongs to QT Marshall, and they set up the Dynamite set. They filmed how many, I don't know, 60 matches or something in 2 days or 1 day. Britt Baker broke her nose, but still wrestled 3 times after she broke her nose. And Jericho did commentary for all of those shows with him and Tony Schiavone. And he's just hilarious. He's brilliant. He's getting the match over in the ring, but still bringing it back to something that we'll listen to because he's been so entertaining. You know, and that's what, you know, JR does so well, and that's what Jerry Lawler does so well. We want to listen to them because we believe in them, and we agree with them, and we are entertained by them. You know, and because of that, we're already in. So whatever they're selling, we're going to believe. You know, and that's what makes a great commentator. So that's kind of why I appreciate Jericho these days. You know.
Yeah, so I'm a fan, and I feel like that was like a thing I had to get off my chest because I'm constantly all about trying to improve as a person, Chris, because we're all works in progress. We're all flawed, And that was just a little thing. I get too full of my own values sometimes, and I just need to kind of unpeg it a wee bit. And like, why would I put a barrier up to enjoying this guy's work
Yeah, totally.
because of something that I don't even fully know?
If
This
you
is
met him in
stupid.
person, it might be an amazing experience, and your whole opinion would change. You never know. So,
Yeah.
let's take that segue where it is then, and let's go to our recommendation this week involving Y2J Le Champion. What is the match of the week for this week?
Wrestling recommendations, wrestling recommendations, wrestling recommendations. Match of the week.
Oh yeah.
Well, Chris, I'm glad you asked about it. And so my match of the week this week comes from the Go Home show, the Go Home Raw, I should specify, for Unforgiven 2002. So the date on that, I believe, I'm just trying to open my phone up where I jotted it down. I believe it's September 2002, and the specific date is September 16th, 2002. And I can't remember if this is the main event or not, but it's the highlight of the show. Rob Van Dam is the defending Intercontinental Champion, and he's already at this point the number one contender to Triple H's World Heavyweight title. Bischoff puts him in a match against Jericho for the IC belt. And they have this great match on Raw. And here's the thing, when I think of Chris Jericho versus RVD, that is a match that they just kept going back to the well on that over and over again. I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong here, you might be able to correct me, I don't think they ever had like an extended feud or like a pay-per-view match or anything like that.
Yeah, nothing really of note.
But they were always like a reliable TV match. And it just shows. I remember I was watching this match and texting you at the time saying these guys have amazing chemistry. And I'm pretty sure this was not their first TV match. I'm pretty sure they'd wrestled a few times before this because RVD been in the company quite a bit by this point. I'm fairly sure they wrestled during the Invasion, actually. But, they would go on and on to continue to have great TV matches to the extent that they had a match on Raw in 2013 or something like that, didn't they?
Yeah, I loved that match. It was like I think something happened earlier in the show where they had to change a segment, so they just added a segment to that match, so it ended up being like 3 segments long on Raw. It was great.
And and I'd like to think that they've not had their last match together. I'd like to think that there's a possibility of an AEW match. I know he's with Impact right now, isn't he?
Yeah, doing a heel role, which is weird.
Nice, it's interesting. But that guy still has it. Jericho still has it. I think these guys are both at ages now where they don't need to wrestle every week, but when they do, it feels special. So if they ever came together and butted heads, whether it be an AEW or Impact or a cross promotional thing, I don't know. It'd be great to see. But this match is really fun, and so if you like just a great electric wrestling match with a hot crowd, this is a great one to go to. Is it the best match they ever had together? I don't know. I've not seen them all. But there is a few funny consequences about this match as well. There's a there's a guy in the front row during this match who keeps lifting up this Kermit the Frog puppet. He's got a full-on Kermit puppet.
What?
Yeah, and so every time it's a near fall, or indeed when the finish of the match happens, spoiler alert, folks, Jericho wins the IC title through dubious means. He has the puppet up in the air and he does the kind of Kermit, it's the Muppet Show, yay! Like that, So you can just imagine going, oh my god, 1, 2, 3, and the new Intercontinental Champion, it's Chris Jericho, yay!
That's an excellent impression.
But you need to go see it. It's really blink and you miss it. But this guy, and he just times it, and you know that way that Kermit moves when he screams like that. Like he does it perfectly, as if he's so happy that Jericho's the new Intercontinental Champion. So that's a hilarious side note to the match. But the other thing is, and I texted you this the other day, like this was the go home show, like I say, for Unforgiven. And because RVD has lost his IC title, that means that Jericho's scheduled match for Flair is now for the IC belt. So Flair and Jericho are going to collide in a title match now at Unforgiven as opposed to just a grudge match. And they clearly didn't take the time to take an up-to-date picture of Jericho with the Intercontinental title. Their options were to either not bother and just use an old graphic of him, or to use an older one from one of his earlier reigns as Intercontinental Champion. But the problem was that he had very distinctive facial hair at this time. Like he had a big kind of chunky beard, and he had a different look. And that's something that I've always loved about Jericho, is how he always updates his look, even to this day in Dynamite, like on AEW, every single week. The Le Champion character has his own look. So they didn't bother to take a fresh graphic of him. It was like the kind of graphics where like they would move for a bit and then freeze.
Yeah.
And that was a very 2002 thing. You don't really,
Very nostalgic, yeah.
yeah, it's very, very of its time. So what they've done is, and I sent you this the other day, what they've done is instead of like taking like a brand new graphic or just taking a still image and just doing a retro graphic, they've just like taken a 2002 graphic of Jericho flexing his muscles for the promo bumper, and they've just like pasted like a terribly photoshopped IC belt on his shoulder. But because he's flexing his muscles in it, they have to move the belt with him to make it look as if it's on his shoulder, and it's just so bad. It's worse than like in some of the older video games. And I just remember watching that like the other day and just had to screen record it and clip it and send it to you, and I sent it to my other friends as well, just going, the belt, look at the belt. It's ridiculous. So if possible, if
that was a very like Attitude Era thing where like they would just put the belt on pictures, but it was fine because they weren't moving. But it's the fact that this not only is Jericho moving, but the belt is moving too. That's what makes this one hilarious.
It's like, and they have not the movement of the belt is not subtle. It's like the thing's got a life of its own, and it's crawling around his shoulder like an insect or something. So I love this match, not just for the great match, not just for Kermit, but also for this ridiculous graphic. But I have to say, if you want to go on the network and see that graphic, you need to go to the SmackDown that follows it. They do a promotional, here are the matches coming up in Unforgiven, and that's where that graphic comes from. But maybe we could put a quick clip of it on the Instagram. I don't know if we'll get into trouble for that, but we'll give it a shot.
We'll give it a go, yeah. I used to love those promotional things where they'd run through the match card. I used to love them.
Yeah. AEW's been doing it for like Fyter Fest and stuff, or and in the build up to, or even just the matches coming next week on Dynamite. I quite like that they take the time to run through it. I'll make one more cool observation about this Jericho RVD match. How does Jericho celebrate his victory and his Intercontinental title win? Well, he couldn't be bothered posing for a new graphic. We know that. What he does is he takes 2 bottles of a little bit of the bubbly. I don't know why I went English there. A little bit of the bubbly.
A little bit of the bubbly, mate.
A little bit of the bubbly. You'll never ever be the same again. So Jericho douses himself in champagne, and this is in 2002. So it was just pretty cool to be sitting in 2020 watching a wee teaser of what was yet to come with Jericho, the constant reinvention of Chris Jericho being teased there, with him celebrating with a little bit of the bubbly, governor.
A little bit of the bubbly, yeah. That was such a funny, like, it's so funny how things take off, you know?
Yeah.
Like, how did that go over, you know?
But Jericho's Jericho's had a few things like that. Like, you think of the List or It.
Or It, yeah.
He's really good at coming up with these sorts of little things, and like I've said before, he is like the phoenix that constantly regenerates and rises from the ashes. There are so many phases of Jericho that, you know, like the guy knows how to have longevity in terms of action figure production. Now that the AEW toy line has started, like, they can salivate at how many different Jericho toys they'll probably be able to make. Because Jericho's 49 now. I hope, as long as he's fit and healthy, he can continue to do this. He'll probably become more and more part-time as the years go on. But like, I would love it if he just stayed with AEW, and when his in-ring career is over, it'd be great to just see him become an announcer or a commentator, because he's so damn good.
Yeah. He said that on one of the Saturday night specials. Someone asked him that, like, would you be interested in commentary after your in-ring career's over? And he was like, absolutely, because it's a way he can still be creative and still entertain himself when you're still helping other people, you know? So I'd totally be up for that.
It'd be great. He could like be kind of what Taz is doing right now for Cage. Like, you know, he's a commentator, but he could also be a character, a sideman. He could be a great mouthpiece for someone who hasn't quite nailed that skill set yet. Like, that's something.
And I had forgotten how good of a promo Taz was. Like, see how intense he's getting for Brian Cage. Obviously, we know Taz is the kind of daft commentator now, but like back in the day, first of all, when he was the human suplex machine and he was the ECW champion, like, there was no laughing, no smiling, nothing. It was 100% total, you know, toughness and business. And then he kind of went away from that, and it kind of, which is fine because we love Taz from you know, wrestling wise and commentator and host of WWF Hardcore in the car park or the kind of galleries. But now that he's older and stuff, and he's had that commentary stuff, he's still bringing back those promos, which is going to help Brian Cage a lot. I couldn't believe when he was saying, "Beat him if you can, survive if he lets you."
Yeah.
Like he's saying his line,
Yeah.
but on behalf of Cage. You know,
It's great, but Cage is getting a good rub on that because Cage looks amazing, doesn't he? But
yeah, it's
this
great.
this I mean, I'm assuming he's probably not going to win the belt. Maybe he will, but he's going to get a good rub not just from Taz but from working with Moxley. And so I'm really excited for Fyter Fest, and the fact that it's going to run over 2 nights, over 2 different weeks, 2 episodes of Dynamite is great news. And I tell you what, though, it kind of feels though that there's now 2 Tazes in AEW because
Is
there's
he
the
still doing
Taz.
commentary?
Yeah, he's still doing commentary on Dark. So
Right.
there's the Taz that does commentary on Dark, and here's the one thing, my only criticism of Dark. You know how like on AEW Dark they don't have a lot of the roster like they do for Dynamite out at ringside to make noise.
Right.
So it is very kind of stripped down and silent. But what that means is that I think that's why Taz doesn't kind of speak loudly in the way that he used to do in Impact and in WWE. So he kind of talks quietly through the matches, and that's not the Taz on commentary I remember. What I remember is more like when he's cutting a promo for Brian Cage. And so it's like there's that Taz who's quite quiet and soft-spoken, and then there's the Brian Cage Taz. But weirdly, on the last episode of Dark, which I saw, they actually had Moxley wrestle on Dark. And he had a great match, another contender for my match of the week this week. So go and watch AEW Dark from, by the time this comes out, not the most recent episode, but the episode before, because Moxley has a great match, and Taz slowly morphs in that match from the quiet commentator to the Brian Cage guy.
Nice.
But it's weird. He kind of has 2 roles. But I'm all about Taz in AEW right now, and I think putting him with Cage is just what that guy needs. And I've got high hopes for this match at Fyter Fest. I hope, regardless of the result, I really hope that Cage comes out of it like more valid of a main eventer. Do you know what I mean?
And what's it going to be at Fyter Fest? It's going to be a rocket buster. Right.
It definitely will be.
You speak about commentary teams and Taz being on commentary. This is going to segue us beautifully into what I'm thankful for this week in wrestling.
What I'm thankful for in wrestling this week.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this week I don't want to take too much time because there's not much really to say about this one. But what I'm thankful for this week are short-lived commentary teams, right?
Oh, cool.
Because I don't know about you, but in terms of like watching wrestling all throughout my life, I've always liked to listen to the commentary. I've always liked to watch the entrances. I've always liked to listen to the crowd. I've always liked these other aspects, you know?
Yeah.
Not just the in-ring. So, like, for example, when Tuesday morning comes, you know, and I want to watch Raw, firstly, before I'll go to YouTube, I'll try and find the full show on Dailymotion or on Vimeo or something like that and try Chromecast it to TV so I can watch the whole show. So I can hear the commentary and so I can see everything else, you know, the promos and stuff. If it's not possible, obviously, because it's not, you know, it's meant to be on TV, then obviously I'll just watch the YouTube highlights, but I like to try and watch the full show when I can. I don't know where I was going with that, but I think because I watched SmackDown today. This is Saturday when we're recording this, and I watched SmackDown this morning, and I was able to watch the whole show. You know, I was able to see these promos and stuff rather than just the highlights that they post on YouTube. And by the way, that kind of annoys me. Why WWE are so it doesn't annoy me, but it confuses me why WWE are so hung up on why the ratings are bad when literally they upload the whole show and highlights.
This is it.
You know what I mean?
Don't get me wrong. I'm grateful
people
for it because I don't have BT Sports, but you're right.
Yeah.
Like I'm not compelled to watch their programs anymore because I can see the best bits, and a lot
That's
of them.
it.
It's like 5 minutes of a match, you know.
It's like people aren't willing to stay up to 4 in the morning and watch 3 hours of a show when literally they can have a good sleep, wake up in the morning and watch the whole thing in half an hour, you know? That's the issue. And it's not just that as well, it's the continuous social media posts and it's the continuous uploads throughout the week. You literally see everything. And I guess wrestling fans like us that are kind of like, well, we kind of want to see the whole thing. That's fine. But that's, you know, those numbers are dying down quickly, you know? Even me, who will watch anything wrestling, sometimes like I just want to watch it in 25 minutes and get it over with. You know what I mean? And you can do that by WWE themselves. But anyway, I digress, which is another thing Taz would say all the time on commentary. So in terms of short-lived commentary teams, I like when, for example, when a commentator was switched out with someone else, I would always make that a big deal. You know, I need to watch Raw this week because someone else is on commentary. And it's like, you know, Jericho being with Tony Schiavone. It made me want to watch the whole show and listen to the show to hear them have a laugh. And I mentioned Taz and Mike Tenay before on TNA. always having a laugh, you know.
Yeah.
So it got me thinking, what are some of the most, you know, beloved commentary teams that didn't have a run? You know, you think of like Lawler and JR being like the standard, like they were the people who were there for years, decades, together. You know, Michael Cole and Taz had many, many years together and
Yeah.
whoever. But there's ones that were really short lived. So I think of JR and Paul Heyman, for example, that they
Yeah.
were together for
Oh,
8 months, you know.
excellent.
Still longer than a couple of weeks, but still not the longest time together, you know. They're one of my
Mhm.
favourite commentary duos ever. And then I've got on here when CM Punk joined the team,
Oh, yeah.
when Punk was with Josh Matthews and Punk was with Michael Cole in like 2010 sort of time, he was great. And it felt as if you
Absolutely.
had to watch the show because you need to hear Punk, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've also got Mick Foley when he joined in 2008. So Mick Foley did a short-term run with Michael Cole on SmackDown, then with JR on SmackDown before not renewing his contract. But also we did One Night Stand 2005 with Joey Styles,
Yeah. I was just
which
thinking about that.
is one of my favourite things on that show, hearing that commentary team, you know, and them literally just having so much respect for each other, but also trying to enjoy the show. You know, I think
Yeah.
that's really important.
They're
Um,
passionate and they enjoy it. I just love, hey, Joey, can I call that? Sure. Insecurity.
what he goes, nicely done, Micker. Uh,
He does. He does.
how many times we watched that show? Oh my god! So those are my favourite kind of short-lived commentary teams. Another one as well I wanted to give a shout out to was Michael Cole, Corey Graves, and friend of the show Jonathan Coachman
Oh,
from
yeah.
2018. And I felt as if around that time, and then Coach was replaced by Renee Young, who I thought did a stellar job as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Every week on Tuesday, when I would go on Twitter, all I would see was all this abuse for the commentary. Like Michael Cole and Coach just having a laugh, don't care about what's going on and stuff. And I was always confused by that. I found it really
Hmm.
entertaining, like when Renee was out there and Graves was trying to make her laugh, you know, and I don't know. I guess maybe they're taken away from the ethics of wrestling. But
I'm
I
a big
found it
fan of
funny,
Renee.
you know.
Yeah.
She's
Big fan
so
of
good at her
Renee.
job, it's crazy.
But I would actually, you're talking about short-lived commentary teams. Like pretty much any commentary team that Coachman has been part of in his career, I'm a fan of because he's had a few runs on the mainstream commentary.
Yeah.
And I just don't think he's ever gotten the credit as an announcer. I think some people don't like the sound of his voice, but I love it. I think he's got it's distinctive, and that's what you want as a. There's too many like commentators or aspiring commentators who just they don't sound distinctive.
He sounds like a
Whereas
reporter.
he does, and that's why I mean he can do color because he's done color quite a lot in his career because he knows how to play the kind of cocky, confident, full of himself coach character. But also when he's just playing like the straight kind of play-by-play kind of commentator, his reporter kind of style works really well with that. And then we saw that in Raw when he was briefly back a couple of years ago. Someone who's not short-lived, but I just want to tell you how much I enjoy. I'm a huge, increasingly so, a huge fan of Beth Phoenix and NXT commentary.
Ah, yes, absolutely. Why is that?
That's all I have to say. I just think she's because I think it's because she's a wrestler.
Yeah,
But here's the thing. I actually didn't know how good she was verbally because she really, dominated the women's division at a time where they didn't get a lot of airtime. So I don't think I ever saw like the best of her verbally, like in the wrestling that I've seen. But I just love the dynamic of her and Morrow particularly because like they'll talk about the match and then Morrow will be like, Beth, what's your experience of receiving this move or being in this hold? And then she gives that like wrestlers within the kayfabe kind of wrestlers perspective of the hold, and it just adds a bit of legitimacy to it. And that's what NXT's always had is that sense of legitimacy.
And that's why Morrow's so good as well, because you can see that, you know. And that just reminded me of another great one, Morrow, Ronaldo, and Daniel Bryan, the Cruiserweight Classic.
Of course, I'd forgotten all about that. Yeah, they were excellent in that role.
So good, so much knowledge, so much enthusiasm.
And Brian's so passionate about it. So, and the dynamic works in the same way. Morrow is just this great, credible sportscaster. Like he did the McGregor Mayweather fight. This guy is a mainstream guy. And then he can then bounce off Brian, and Brian can give the insight of a wrestler who's experienced these moves and these holds. And I love that. I love that dynamic. And you don't get that. And well, I suppose Corey could provide it to an extent in WWE, but
I think Corey's really good.
Yeah, I like Corey. I'm a fan.
I hope Daniel Bryan goes back and does some commentary before he's done. When his career, his in-ring career's over, you know. because he
sure
was
he
really,
will.
really good and so much passion, as you say. But the main reason for this, and my favourite short-lived commentator of all time that is returned to me because of this week's watching, is Mike Adamle.
Oh my God, really? That's a surprise.
I mean,
Jeff,
I'm kind of being sarcastic, but I'm also just enjoying listening to him because he's fascinating, right? Because he clearly
yeah,
has no clue, right? But he's a really experienced sportscaster, right? So he used to be an NFL player. He played for the Chicago Bears, and he got lots of injuries to the head, and he's actually been diagnosed with dementia,
yeah, it's
um,
really sad to hear that.
which
Yeah,
is really sad, right? Um, so they made him a sportscaster on for the NFL and that sort of thing, and he's got such a good voice, and he's so good at like preempt reporting, right? Give him a script, give him a a teleprompter. He's great because he's got that sort of intonation in his voice where he's talking about the events of something happening. You can hear that sometimes in his commentary. But
yeah,
the idea that WWE isn't like that, and you just have to come up with it on the fly, and he's paired with Taz, who is like really, really good at that off the cuff, calling these moves and these high spots and that sort of thing. And Mike just isn't. He's just not good at it. And I just find it really interesting hearing Taz and Adamle going back and forth. And he's not my favourite short-lived commentator of all time, but I do like enjoy listening to him because it's just funny hearing someone who isn't an expert trying to come off as an expert. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's just interesting. And a couple of times I'm watching it, I was just been laughing. Like Taz is, you can hear Taz getting kind of frustrated with him sometimes. So Big Show does a choke slam to Tommy Dreamer, and Mike Adamle goes, "Tommy Dreamer just got knocked." And that's it, and doesn't say anything else. And Taz just goes, "Down, Mike, down. He got knocked down."
Brilliant. I tell you what, I liked him as GM. I'm just going to say it. I liked him as GM. It was
Adamle,
weird. It was unexpected, but it was weird. I liked it.
he's
Something's
calling,
weird is good.
he's calling CM Punk CM.
Hey,
Another
CM.
drop kick by CM. And
It's like
just weird.
that's like when DDP used to call the Undertaker Take. Hey, Take.
Right. A lot of people call him Take.
Take.
But honestly, man, he's just funny. Of course, unfortunately, he gets regarded as this guy that always made mistakes. But to me, he's a reporter that is given a go. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that. Like, let's put you in this role and see what you can do. And he's trying. You know what I mean? It just didn't work out. So I think it's fascinating to hear these short-lived commentary teams because you forget about loads of them, and you get ones like Brian and Morrow that did work, and you get ones like Taz and Mike Adamle that didn't work, and that's all right.
Mm.
Not everything has to be perfect. So that's what I
Can you
want to talk
believe?
about.
Can you believe that Mike Adamle now today is 70 years old?
It's crazy, innit? It's crazy, man.
Well, listen, as you and I, as the Wrestling Connection, Mike Adamle, we wish you well.
Absolutely.
We hope that you are as happy and as healthy as possible. Really sad about his diagnosis, but the guy has given sports fans a lot of memories, and he's given wrestling fans a lot of memories as well. So we're thankful for him, even though we've done the thankful bit, But we're thankful for him.
I would love him to do as an intro. That'd be great.
I know it's probably impossible, but he is one of those kind of cool, more obscure names in the wrestling lore. That would be awesome if it could ever have happened.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, let's move on and let's close today's show with a little. Have you got time for a little story, Glentifer?
I do, but there's a segment we need to do before that.
Oh yes.
And that
Sorry. I forgot. Let's do it. How could I have forgotten?
I can't forget because the urge is really overpowering right now. So, folks, stay tuned because it's time for this week's toilet break. I was going to say I can actually hear the jingle when I say that.
Toilet break.
Ooh, yeah. Please tell me you put your old drama teacher in the Taz mission.
It wasn't the Taz mission. It was the Cali Vice grip.
And by the way, that's the bit you should cut back into when I said that, because I haven't mentioned at that point. We haven't mentioned the specific names, but please tell me you put your drama teacher in a Taz mission.
I put it in the Cali Vice grip, brought her to the ground, and then I had to kind of straddle her and put my two hands over her throat and kill her.
Wow. So yeah, if listeners, if you don't know, Chris is an actor, so a lot of these conversations sound bizarre, but when you realize that he can get away with any crime because he can just say he was practicing a scene.
That's it. I'm just working. I'm working, mate. But
Yeah.
do you know what? It's coming up now to the 5-year anniversary of one of the shows I did when I was at school. The kind of show that kind of made me want to follow that kind of dream and work towards it. And honestly, man, 5 years is crazy because it's one of those things that always comes back to me, like when I think about things, and because it's so much that happened in the school.
Mm,
It's just funny. It's just time flies by.
it really does.
Anyway,
Speaking of time flying by, Chris,
well, let
I
me tell you
can't.
something. The time is up, and that time is up, and this time is now. We can't see each other because we're on recording, not video. The time is now.
That was clunky, but it was good.
Better than nothing. Okay, here we go.
Final segment of the day, folks, is Meet a Wrestler Q Jingle.
But as it will now be known as Maw.
Meet a wrestler, we've met a wrestler in the flesh.
Ooh yeah.
So I'm really lucky, Chris, that like yourself, I've been able to meet a lot of wrestlers. The first of which being at the age of 12 when I met Rikishi. So it means that when it comes around to being my turn for doing this segment, I'm always spoiled for choice, and I will be for the foreseeable future until I run out. And hopefully by the time I've run out of stories, I'll have new stories to tell because the world will be
Yeah.
back to normal, and maybe I'll have met some new wrestlers by that point. But I'm going to tell a story about the second time I ever met a wrestler. So this is about 2 years after Rikishi, and I'm telling the story because I was listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce and Conrad, and they did a special on ECW One Night Stand 2005, and I realized that podcast came out on the 15-year anniversary of that show. And that was on Sunday, June 12th. And it was a few days later on Thursday, June 16th, 2005, I think, when the WWE were in town. They were in Glasgow, the SmackDown brand specifically. And it was that day that I met a guy called John Cena.
John Cena.
And so if you've got your wrestling historian hat on, you'll know that in June 2005, Cena was in his first reign as WWE champion. And the way this all came about was I'm 29 now. So in 2005, I was 14. And my dad one weekend was reading his newspaper and he goes, oh, here. And he had this cutting from a newspaper. He cut out his paper, this advert to say that John Cena would be doing an appearance at HMV in Argyle Street, Glasgow, on the 16th of June, 2005. And I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. And then I looked at the calendar and I realized that's a Thursday. I'm in school that day.
Oh, man.
I know, right? And, it's a bit kind of weird for me to tell the story now as a teacher, but oh my God, I begged and I pleaded for permission to not be in school that day, to be conveniently sick so that I could go at the age of 14 and meet John Cena.
I've done that plenty of times as well.
Oh, I know you have. It's like, so I feel like I need to state now, I do not condone at all. No, I seriously, I do not condone
Right, obviously,
skipping school for stuff like this. I did it when I was 14. I shouldn't have done it, but I did, and this is the story. You learn from your mistakes, right, Chris?
Absolutely.
And sometimes you meet the WWE champion from your mistakes.
Yeah, let's make that clear. This isn't a mistake, right? It was a misjudgmental decision back in the day.
Uh-huh. So you had to go and pick up. They only would do this sometimes at autograph signings. You had to go and pick up a wee ticket for it, but it was free.
Right.
But it was just that was your way in. And so I got 2 little stubs to meet Cena from HMV, I think maybe a few days before. And I remember, for whatever reason, Robert didn't want to come with me. Maybe he didn't want to skip school. I think that was probably why. But
because he was sensible.
Exactly. But I had no one to go with. And I actually, on the 16th of June 2005, when I got off the train, it was actually quite a wet day, as I recall, in Glasgow. I got to Argyle Street, and they'd set up basically some like a pole kind of scaffolding structure outside HMV so we could queue on the street as opposed to queuing in the store.
Right.
And I had the spare ticket, so I think I gave it away to somebody, like, because I had mine to meet John Cena, and this was all in promotion of his CD, "You Can't See Me,"
Really?
with that trademark, whatever the guy's name was. And say what you want, like last week we had a wee giggle about WWE originals, didn't we? But
Yeah.
John Cena's album is pretty good. Okay, like
Yeah, I think Bad Man is really good, the one he performed on Raw. But do you remember the music video? Oh, what was it called?
the
My
A-Team.
My Time or something?
Oh, do you mean the one where it's like kind of a soft song, emotional?
Yeah, and they showed like the music video on Raw.
Because there's My Time Is Now. The
Okay, it's not My Time.
But I know the one.
Hang on, I'm going to search it.
Is it Right Now you're talking about?
Right now, that's it. Not My Time. That one right there.
I love this song so much.
It's so emotional.
I really love it. I'm gonna download that again. Come on then. Yeah, okay. I'm not gonna play the whole thing.
It's
Was that the same singer from Mark Henry's theme?
It might have been. But I hope so. But honestly, it was like the how many years anniversary, 15-year anniversary or something of that music video being on Raw, like recently. And it was on Instagram, and I watched it, and I got really emotional. It was so nostalgic, that sort of wee tune at the start, and then because Cena was the man at the time, like he was the main guy. Like when you were a kid, like nothing was cooler than Cena. So that music video and just that weird sound and like the kind of high pitched voice and stuff like that. And the music video where he's like got the cars and he's like shining the cars and he's like putting his brothers in the walls of Jericho and stuff. It was so nostalgic. That's such a good song.
Brilliant. And I bought the CD that day because that was the thing. You had to buy the CD and that would get you the ticket, but you didn't need to get the CD signed. So I missed an opportunity to get that CD signed. I've still got the disc, but I never got the CD signed. Instead, I brought a copy of SmackDown magazine, of which he was on the cover on.
I always think that must be quite random for the people who are signing though. Like if, for example, so that's obviously an obvious one, like getting the Cena CD signed, right? And you had to buy that for the ticket. But sometimes when it's just the latest DVD that's out, like I wondered if the wrestler who's doing the signing is like, why are all these people got the same DVD getting signed? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like when I met Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase, you had to buy TLC 2009 because it just came out.
Yeah, and, that's right.
Like everybody had to everyone was getting that signed, and like they're not even on the show, but they're like, why is everybody asking me to sign this?
It's like when I met Carlito and Primo, it was Royal Rumble in 2009. They're not even on the cover of the disc, and that's a Royal Rumble cover where there's loads of wrestlers, but they're not even on it.
Couldn't even make the cover.
So yeah, so I queued up, and a reminder: I am 14 at this stage. I'm not very confident socially. I'm shy, and like my social life is pretty much hanging out with Robert and a couple of other friends. Like I don't, I'm not one of the cool kids, put it that way. And believe it or not, Chris. So I queued up, and I didn't know that ECW had a revival until that day when I overheard a couple of like adults in the queue talking about One Night Stand, which had been the previous Sunday.
That's right. You said that, yeah.
And I just looked up the set list, the set of the card from that show that night, which I think was at the SECC as opposed to Brayhead Arena. I might be wrong with that. It might have been Brayhead Arena, but it was one of the two. And the main event was like Cena, Kurt Angle, and JBL with special guest enforcer. Wait for it, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
What?
Yeah, Austin was on that show in 2005, mere days after he tore the place down, like causing havoc at One Night Stand.
In Glasgow?
In Glasgow, yeah. I had no idea that he was on that show.
Oh my God, why wasn't that at that show?
I know, well, 2005, like I was 14, my dad would never have allowed like forked out money to take me to a show like that.
God.
So it's like because after Rebellion 2001, there I've mentioned it again, I didn't go to like a big WWE show until 2007, by which point I was 16 and had saved up money for the ticket. So it was weird looking at that card. I had no idea at the time that like Austin was in town. So that was pretty. It's mental, isn't it? So like, if anyone's listening to this who was at that show, please get in touch and tell us about it, because I wasn't at it, Chris wasn't at it, and I met Cena that day. But Like, I don't think anybody was buzzing about Cena above a certain age that night. They were probably buzzing about Austin. So,
Yeah.
so it was cool. And I think we must have queued for about an hour. And I was quite far ahead in the queue. I was one of the first to meet him. And I just remember they started blaring out his CD in the shop, and we could hear it from outside. And there were a couple of wee boys knocking about who didn't have tickets to see him. And by this point, I'd already given away my spare. So I felt quite bad because I would love to have given it to a kid, but I think I gave it to another adult. Or, well, I was a teenager, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But there was just a bunch of wee boys who kept running in and out of the store just to look at him, which was really funny because there was not much security about. So yeah, I met him, and that way, like, it still happens now as an adult. Like, you're in the queue to meet somebody and you're thinking about what you might say to them or how you might talk to them. And it's so much easier for me now that I'm a bit more confident and I'm a grown man. But back then, I was terrified in the queue. The closer I got to him, and then when I first got a glimpse of him, I thought, oh my god, this man is massive. And the closer I got to John Cena, like, the more terrified I got of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And comparatively speaking, I did really well with Rikishi, but this I bombed. So finally I got to John Cena, and there was none of this like hand whatever you want sign to somebody. Like, you went right up to him, right in front of him, in front of the desk that he was sat at, and I was terrified. And so I walked up to him. Somebody had said, "Okay, off you go. You can go see him." And I walked up to him, and he looked at me, and I went, "John Cena." That's all I could say. I just went, "John Cena." And he looked at me, and in that minute, in that second, I could tell that he felt really sorry for me. Like, he felt really, and this is the
Oh,
thing, like, John Cena, nobody come at me and say that John Cena is a bad wrestler or a bad guy. This guy gave like thousands of dollars to Shad Gaspard's family. He just donated $1 million to Black Lives Matter.
how
Like,
crazy is that, man?
John Cena is a good guy. Like, he is a guy who is aware of his position, his privilege, and his platform, and he does good.
One of the
And
good guys.
like we were saying about Batista earlier, like, he's a guy who's got a bright career ahead of him in terms of his acting. And in that isolated moment, he saw this anxious teen who could barely get 2 words out, and he was really sympathetic. And in response, he gave me this really sympathetic look, and he just extended his hand. And you know that way you were talking about your handshake with Tatanka, like that kind of manly kind of hand
Yeah.
clapping thing. He did that to me, and that, I think that was his way of telling me that it's okay. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So he grabbed my hand, and then he enclosed it in his other hand, and I'm just thinking, this guy's hands are huge. He's got such big hands, and I've got these wee like 14-year-old boy hands. You know what
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And so he just looked at me for a second and nodded, and then he let me go and signed my magazine, and that was it. Like, and it was the least verbal wrestler interaction I've ever had, really. But it's one of the most meaningful for me because I was so scared, and it was, apart from me going, John Cena, we didn't say anything. We said, he said nothing to me at all the whole time, but he grabbed me, and he grabbed my hands, and he gave me that look, nodded at me, and then signed my magazine. And I feel like that was just him saying, "It's fine, don't worry, chill, it's fine. I'm
Oh,
just
that's
a
great.
guy." So like, I just won't hear it. If anyone tries to tell me that John Cena is a bad wrestler or a bad guy, I'm sorry, I have no time for you. I've got what most people don't have. I've met the man, and he was really good to me, and I felt really vulnerable at that moment, and he was just such a good guy. So I'll put it up on the Instagram at some point after this pod goes out. John, you're Chris.
Oh my god, I wish it was John Cena.
I'll put the magazine, because I've still got the cover of that
I was going to
Smack the
say,
magazine.
do you have a picture with you and Cena?
No, I don't. I did take a picture of him when I was in the queue, and it was on an old phone, and I lost it years ago. But they weren't allowing selfies or anything like that.
Right,
You weren't allowed to do it. It was one of those.
Just when you said it's going to be on Instagram, I thought, oh my god, you got a picture, but okay, the autograph's cool.
Dude, if I had a picture of Cena, I would have shown you in November 2012 when I first met you.
Hi, I'm Greg. Look at this picture.
Dude, I would have had it printed on a t-shirt or something. But yeah, so like, it's it might on paper, like if you were to script it out, look like not much, by the way, because I've had much more bizarre wrestling interactions, talking to Eric Bischoff about beer or Paul Heyman about the weather or, watching Paul Heyman berate my friend Robert for being clumsy. There's lots of stories that I've yet to tell on this podcast. But this one's always a really sentimental one for me because
That's
I don't
great.
know, you reflect on your teenage years, and I see it a lot as a teacher now, and I'm surrounded by teenagers. You sympathize for that. You become more self-aware, you become a bit more socially anxious. And for some of us, it takes years to kind of break out of that. And I just feel like in that one moment, he saw it and did his best to dispel it without even saying a thing.
Would
And
you
that's why I'm a
say
Johnson fan.
Would you say this is a life-defining moment for you? So, and for two ways. One, because you would go on and meet all these other wrestlers. So it's the first time that you were standing in the queue, you saw the wrestler you're about to meet, and you got all nervous, right? That's
Yeah.
way number one. And then way number two would be like the way that you're able to talk to wrestlers now. You know what I mean? You're more comfortable with it now because obviously not as comfortable as you would become, but like this is probably a good example of like John showing you that like there's just guys and girls, they're just normal people, you know?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was definitely quite formative. A lot of stuff that happens to you in your teenage years is, and I've never thought about it along those lines before, but now you frame it that way, and it does make sense. The next wrestler I would meet after that would be, I think, Jeff Hardy, and like that was a much better interaction in terms of my confidence. So, like,
You still get nervous though when you see them because
yo,
it's
oh
like it's
yeah,
still that aura, you know?
I was nervous. The last big wrestling personalities I met were Conrad and JR, and I was still
Yeah,
nervous
I'll
when
always
Conrad
be
was trying to
nervous.
flog
Yeah.
his blue chew to me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but it's not just wrestlers though. Like, see, just other celebrities. Like, so for example, say I've done a play in a theater, right? And
yeah,
oh no, I've been to see a play, right? Here's a better example. I've been to see a play, and a lot of the times at these sort of smaller theaters, the actors will come out after and see their family and take pictures of people and that sort of thing. Even that, well, this is like a peer. You know what I mean? Like I could
yeah.
have been doing the exact same job, getting paid the exact same amount of money, but having to go up and say, "Oh, I really enjoyed the show" and stuff, that still makes me kind of anxious. You know, just I don't know if
Yeah,
it's not because of the wrestling, but just because you're going to kind of make an impression on someone. You know.
it does. Yeah, and I've had like subsequent traumatic episodes with this. It was waiting outside a theater, which caused me to be attacked by Morgan Freeman's bodyguard because I said hello to him, and that's maybe
Right.
another story for another time.
What? Yes,
Um,
you have to tell us that story.
One day, yeah. The Morgan Freeman. I've met Morgan Freeman. It was quick and it was painful, literally. um. So, but yeah, yeah, I would say it did. I think it did a lot for me, especially because I was out of school that day, and I wasn't like when you're a teenager, like you're worried about the judgment of your peers. But I didn't know anyone there. The only person I knew was John Cena because I'd seen him on telly.
Yeah.
So, like, I wasn't worried about being seen to be anxious. I was quite openly anxious. And I think when you have a platform to feel safely anxious, that's healthier than bottling it up, which is what you kind of do at that age, and we
Yeah.
still do as adults. It's better just to try and be a bit more open about it, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to try and be a mental health coach to anyone listening to this, but for me, certainly that was
No, no.
a big helpful thing. You know what I mean?
But it's like real life experiences that everyone can relate to. Like everyone's been nervous talking to someone they admire, you know.
Mhm.
And I would always see the day after I would do a signing or something, and I would go to school the next day. I would always feel really cool, like that I was out of school and everyone thought I was at the dentist, and everyone thought I was in the doctor's, you know. But actually, I just met Jeff Hardy or whoever, you know.
Yeah, it's you do get a buzz afterwards. I remember actually having to. The rule was that after that signing, I would go to my dad's work, get his car keys, and then go wait in his car for an hour or so. And I just remember sitting in the car playing the John Cena CD, just mesmerized by the signature. And had a wee buzz after,
Yeah,
after going through that, and that's it. When you go for something which is riddled with anxiety, you get a bit of an adrenaline boost when it's all said and done. And it's funny because like John Cena's signature has changed over the years, so this doesn't look like the kind of Cena signature you would buy at a live event for the
right.
mid kind of 2010s. It's a little bit different, and I'll put it on the Instagram and people can see it. Like, but this was like 2005 era John Cena signature. I also just distinctly remember the kid in front of me getting "Here Comes the Pain" signed, which is Brock Lesnar.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that was a
Yeah.
weird one. But
What,
you
the
know
game
what?
or the
The game,
DVD?
the game,
Oh
the game.
God.
Um, Yeah, so, but that was Cena's video game debut, so it makes sense.
That's true. Yeah,
At least on PlayStation, at least.
yeah.
But yeah, it was a big deal for me, and I still fondly remember it. And usually when I'm as a teacher, you always get to a point when you've known your pupils for a while that you can start to be a bit more open with them, and I love that. I cherish that. And, like, you want to have a positive relationship with your pupils where you don't just need to be this cold teacher. You can actually just be a person to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that takes time to build that relationship. So I'm not going to feel that straight away in my new school, but I hope, I know it'll come eventually. But that's one thing I enjoyed about my last place that I worked in, was that, I was at a point where I could, say, skipping school is bad. I went for a terrible experience the one time I did it, so don't do it. I could share this story about John Cena, and it wasn't
That's
a terrible
great.
experience, as we're saying, but do you know what I mean? It's like, it's nice to retell that story and do so in a way that's hopefully productive for the people around me.
Totally.
I guess that was it, really.
Great. It's a great story. I guess a similarity for me in terms of like that sort of being all nervous and then it really helping the experience, actually helping you going forward, was maybe my Piper experience that I talked about before.
Yeah, lovely
Like
story.
you're just like, you're seeing just this legend in front of you that everybody who is meeting before you is having this amazing experience with. So now you almost feel pressure, you don't want to have a bad experience with him. So when I went up to him and stuff, and he was so nice, and I talked about this a few episodes ago, and he's like talking to my dad, get my dad involved, and wanting to take a picture with me and embrace it, asking me questions and things like that. It just makes such a difference, and it puts you at ease a little bit because they kind of reassure you. It's like Cena with that look to you and that sort of thing. It kind of makes you go, all right, well, it's just John. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's beautiful. Good stuff. We
really
love these stories here.
I love it. And I also just appreciate how John Cena, squeezed my hand, even though it must have been very sweaty at the time. So yeah, that's it. Can I make a request, Chris, that as we bring the podcast to a close, can we get played out to Right Now by John Cena and That Trademark as our outro theme for this week? Is that doable?
We can. Well, the only issue with playing actual songs is that I don't want to get flagged for copyright. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't know who owns the songs. Like, actually, so the other week when we played Mark Henry's theme song, I actually got flagged on YouTube.
Did it?
Someone has copyrighted the song "Start Rocking." But
well,
I didn't
maybe we could avoid
anything on iTunes. I didn't get anything on Spotify or anything, so maybe I could do it on Spotify.
Well, listen, maybe we should just encourage people to go and listen to the song, and we can play out our usual intro.
I'll see. I'll look into it and see how it can be done.
Okay,
that's a good shout though. Yeah, so, oh God, this is the length of a normal episode, and we didn't actually have a main topic. This was our first themeless episode, because it's episode 10. We've reached a kind of checkpoint, and we wanted to just kind of shoot the breeze a little bit and just bring everybody in and up to speed the fact that we are here. We're going to be here every week, no matter how hectic life gets with lockdown now being eased. We hope everybody is still staying safe, staying busy, staying positive, because we will be here every week to try and relax and connect with each other and with all the listeners out there about the thing we love more than anything, and that is the WWE, baby.
Nice one. Yeah, you know it. We'll be here every week. You can rely on that, folks. Anything else you want to chuck in there, folks? Chris, rather. Chris, John, who are you?
I'm John Cena. Recognize. No, listen.
Well, that makes sense because I can't see you.
Hey, boom, roasted. No, we'll call it a day there, and we'll let you get back to your busy day that you've had since 4 a.m. this morning. And
right.
and we'll return next week, next Sunday, right here on all of your favourite podcasting outlets. Please tell a friend if you know that you have wrestling fans in your inner circle that are diehard fans right now, or that may have been a fan before but have maybe become lapsed over the years. This is also a podcast for them. We want to try and reach as many different wrestling fans as possible, because everyone has been a wrestling fan at least once in their life, or at least has seen it, So we want to try and connect with as many people as possible. So if you know anybody who likes podcasts, who needs some entertainment to kill some time and that sort of thing, please share the Wrestling Connection podcast. We'll be here every week chatting about different ways that we are all connected by this wacky world. And you can follow us on our social media pages, Twitter and Instagram. Instagram is at WrestleConnection. Twitter is at WrestleConnect1. Facebook is facebook.com/The Wrestling Connection. And YouTube, you can get us on there just by searching The Wrestling Connection podcast. Give us a subscribe on there, a like and a share and all that stuff on our socials so you can stay connected with us just like we are connected to the professional wrestling industry. Anything else before we sign off today, my friend?
Nah, Chris, I just want to thank everyone for listening. Please get in touch and share the pod as much as you can. We want to reach as many people as possible. It's a joy for us to do this, and it would bring me even more joy to know that it's reaching more ears. And do yourselves a favor, go listen to the John Cena album from 2005. You Can't See Me.